All right, Shalom. First and foremost, want to begin this lesson by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, Wahar Rakha Kodash, which in the ancient Hebrew tongue would be the correct names of the Heavenly Father, His beloved Son, and the Holy Spirit. I also want to give double honors to my teachers, the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom. Much due honors and respect to the fellow laborers out there that's continually pushing out this gospel in all true faith and sincerity, as well as you believers, the few brothers and the sisters out there that subscribe to this truth as well. So this is going to be yet another edition of an ongoing series, which is inspired by the apostles, and the elders, which is entitled, This Is Why We Call You the Devil. All right? And this is an effort through the Spirit to basically expose and highlight the wickedness of the so-called white man. Because right now you got these devils through their media, and their feeble attempts to demonize the different Israelite groups. And basically they're attempting to paint the picture and frame us as being the biggest hate group ever assembled. Meanwhile, when you look into the history of these devils, it's riddled with rape, robbery, and murder. The very overtone screams hate, all right? But once you confront this man on his past, and even to this very day, his ill dealings and the treachery, that he's committed throughout the planet Earth, well, his response is, that's the past. We need to just move on, let bygones be bygones, man. And that in itself is hypocritical. It shows you how much of a devil the so-called white man is. For an example, right here in this current society, in this system, which was erected by the so-called white man, well, if you look to, get a loan or buy a car or a house, well, these devils require your past credit history, man. So you see the hypocrisy of these devils. They want you to forget about the past, and move on. But their policy, whenever you're trying to do anything across the board, is they take a thorough look into your past credit history. You see? But right now, court is in session, man. We're in the time appointed. Well, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah is making Esau bare. According to the prophecy, man, the Lord is stripping this devil naked, which pretty much means this man is being exposed, all right? And we laying out all the evidence, and basically this man is guilty on all charges, all right? So in this lesson right here, I wanted to highlight the Trail of Tears, which if you have a feel for history, you'll know that this came about through the so-called white man and his legislations in the form of the Indian Removal Act of 1820, I believe it was, the 1820s into the 1830s, where these devils pretty much moved and forced the natives out of their land, the land where they owned for generations and generations. They cultivated this land. It was the land of their ancestors, which, by the way, the Native Americans are Israelites, all right, of the tribe of Gad and Reuben. You got a lot of guys out there who vehemently come up against the idea of the Native Americans being the Israelites. And they like to go to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, where it talks about Israel going into captivity in ships. Well, if you did your research, you'll know that the Native Americans went into captivity as well in ships, man. All right? That devil, Christopher Columbus, he sent slaves back over to Europe, to the king and queen, and they was natives. All right? But the point is, the so-called white man is the devil. And through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, we're going to bring out proof to justify why we call you the devil, all right? So let me pull this up. And this is the sources from the History Channel. all right, history.com, and you see it's entitled Trail of Tears. All right, so it says, at the beginning of the 1830s, nearly 125,000 Native Americans lived on millions of acres of land in Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, and Florida. Land their ancestors had occupied and cultivated for generations. Yeah, and these devils, in attempt to suppress history, and cloud, information, they put out certain lies saying that the natives adopted the ways of the settlers and the so-called white man in the form of picking up on farming and agriculture from the so-called white man. When that's a lie, all right? Pretty much you devils learned how to farm and till the land from the natives, man. And that's the pride of the pride of the so-called white man, all right? They feel as if they civilized the world. My question is, what the hell you think the natives were doing before your red ass got over here, man? All right? They was cultivating the land. They was farming and they was living off the land. All right? So it says, by the end of the decade, very few natives remained anywhere in the southeastern United States, working on behalf of white settlers who wanted to grow cotton on the Indians' land. The federal government forced them to leave their homelands and walk thousands of miles to a specifically designated Indian territory across the Mississippi River. This difficult and sometimes deadly journey is known as the Trail of Tears. Yeah. And this was under the watch of this devil, Andrew Jackson, which, by the way, you so-called white people, you hold him in high esteem. You highly esteem him as a hero, man. Well, this devil and his military forced the natives to walk in the dead of the winter, man. All right, from the southeast to Oklahoma, the Midwest, in the dead of winter. And they gave them blankets, shit like that. You had babies, you had the elderly. So-called white man had a lot to pay for, man. And you marvel when we call you the devil, all right? Well, we producing the proof which justifies calling you the devil, man, all right? Why? Because the Bible refer to you as the devil, the so-called white man, all right? So it says the Indian problem. And this is the nerve of you so-called white people, man. All right? You framed the Indians being in your way, which was their land. You deemed it as the Indian problem. It says white Americans, particularly those who lived on the western frontier, often feared and resented the Native Americans they encountered to them. American Indians seemed to be an unfamiliar, alien people who occupied land that white settlers wanted. Yeah, and that show you the nerve of these devils, man. All right, they perception of the natives was they was aliens, which that word alien pretty much mean foreigner. When the so-called white man was the foreigner, man. All right, you came over here to the natives' land. All right. It says American Indians seem to be an unfamiliar alien people who occupied land that white settlers wanted and believed they deserved. Yeah, and you wonder why we call you the devil. See? It says some officials in the early years of the American Republic, such as President George Washington, believed that the best way to solve this Indian problem was simply to civilize the Native Americans. See? And that show you the mentality of the so-called white man. Because when we bring out the facts that America is going to be destroyed and ultimately Esau, all right, you so-called white people is going to be taken out of power. Well, you devils, your response is, well, how the world is going to continue. How is the world going to get by without us? And that shows you the pride of the so-called white man. And another thing these devils do, they put out the vibration of the end of the world, being in the form of a comet or asteroid, taking out the entire planet Earth. Or if it is a nuclear war, World War III, that everybody's going to die. See, that's the mentality of Esau, because they feel like if they can't be in control, then nobody can be in control. All right. So for the sake of time, let me jump down to the main point I want to get. Let me see. All right. Indian removal. It says Andrew Jackson had long been an advocate of what he called Indian removal. As an Army general, he had spent years leading brutal campaigns against the Creeks in Georgia and Alabama and the Seminoles in Florida. Campaigns that resulted in the transfer of hundreds of thousands of acres of land from Indian nations to white farmers. As president, he continued this crusade in 1830. He signed the Indian Removal Act, which gave the federal government the power to exchange native-held land in the Cotton Kingdom east of the Mississippi for land to the west in the Indian colonization zone. Yeah, so the point is these so-called white people, they signed into legislation the Indian Removal Act, which is very proud, man. All right, they cast the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua behind them, and they write their own laws to govern themselves by. That's proud as all hell, man. And they felt empowered by the stroke of the pen, by their laws, that it justified the Indians, the so-called Indians, moving out of there. And that's a direct offense of the law right there. All right? But that proves that the so-called white man is the devil that the Bible speaks about. Let me get a quick precept out of the book of Proverbs, the 22nd chapter, in the 28th verse. It says, remove not the landmark which thy fathers have set. And the so-called white man is guilty of that offense. And we reading about it. And they did it in the form of writing a law, which, let me get something else. See, this proves that the so-called white man is the devil, man. Because everything they do is in contrast to what the scriptures say, all right? They're a direct opposition of the words of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. This is Psalms chapter 10 and verse 7. His mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity. Yeah, and that tongue is symbolic to their laws and legislations they pass, which is full of mischief and vanity, man. All right, that was very mischievous for them to write into law, the Indian Removal Act, which led to the Trail of Tears. And when you really go deeper into the research, this was a horrible trip, man. All right, it was freezing cold. The natives, they had nothing but blankets. If that, for most of them, a lot of them was barefoot, and they died horrible deaths, man. And on top of that, you had this devil, Andrew Jackson, and his army, killing a lot of the natives, brutally torturing them, if they wasn't walking fast enough, or if they stopped to rest, they'll pretty much, beat them. All right. And they spare not the young or old. But guess what? We coming into the times where the Lord is going to recompense you so-called white people, man. And the very ones that you put hell on and you dealt treacherously with, they're going to have the honor of paying you back. Matter of fact, let me get that. All right? Because that's biblical prophecy, man. All right? The Lord is a just power. This is not going to go unpunished right here, man. All right? So let me get that in the book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 19. Gad, which is the Native American Indians, a troop shall overcome him, which that's dealing with Andrew Jackson and his army. It says, but he shall overcome at the last, right? And that's the time we in. So the Lord is about justice. Matter of fact, let me get one more. This is Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7. Be not deceived, the Most High is not mocked. Yeah, and that's what you pretty much did in a roundabout way. By dealing treacherously with the Lord's people, you was mocking the Most High, man. All right? It says, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And that's where you have to understand the idea of reincarnation. Because you think Andrew Jackson got away scot-free with that shit, man? No. He's going to be raised back up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's here today to receive the wrath and judgment of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua. All right? He might get the missiles. Then without a doubt, he's going to be raised up. If he's not here right now, that devil is going to be raised up in the kingdom. And we're going to know who he is, man, because we're going to have spiritual power. And we're going to put hell on that devil, man. All right? So, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. You know, Lord willing, it was edifying. Till the next time I say shalom.